and I'm going to watch here on my phone. Okay. Well, I think we might be live. Great. Well, thanks for being part of this conversation. I hope there are a few folks watching online. Let me turn the volume on my phone down here. Hopefully people know me. I'm Alex. Steve and Ben, how about you introduce yourselves? Steve.
Hello. So, hey, I'm Steve Sauer. I am the VP of Design for Bigger Tuna. So Bigger Tuna is a design and engineering firm. We're a real small firm for about 4 people and a series of freelancers over there. Ben included as someone that comes in and helps us on occasion. We have an office on the 2nd floor, Idea Foundry. Kind of uses as everybody. The whole building is our office. We go downstairs and prototype. One of our big things is working with independent inventors, kind of documenting their intellectual property, getting patents, prototyping, and proving the case for existence for their products.
And Ben, who are you?
Ben Satterfield. I'm pretty much a freelance guy. Design, custom fabrication, and prototyping. I work with a lot of different companies. Steve's one of the industrial design firms that I've worked with, plus several others. But basically during this, stay-at-home order, it's mostly just been researching, design. Helping other people out as much as possible.
And I know when our doors are open, you're someone who's practically at the shop 20 hours a day. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm also grateful for a lot of the advice that you're pushing to the group when people ask about, hey, can I 3D print this? You'll say, yeah, you can, but here are the FDA requests and approval processes, et cetera, et cetera. So I hope you're both staying safe and relatively stress-free, but I've been very impressed to hear about what products and designs you're designing and making to help fight COVID. And I think, Steve, you might have gotten invited to help produce some products, and you brought Ben on board. Do you want to talk a little bit about some of the products you've been working on for the last couple of weeks?
Yeah, for sure. Let me talk, and then maybe we'll do a little screen share.
Sure.
We've actually got a little quick background. As things got interesting and it was clear that the world was sort of starting to shut down a little bit, we lost, I would say, probably close to 80% of our day-to-day business. Working with independent inventors, obviously people are starting to rethink, am I going to be paying my mortgage payment or am I going to be designing my product? So we lost a ton of our business. What ended up happening about a week later, as people sort of got into what was happening, there started to be a stream of ideas about COVID-19 related products, needs, specifically the PPE stuff, and some bigger projects like ventilators started to come along. So I actually found that people from Idea Foundry who knew what we did were actually coming to us and tapping us for our thoughts and can we help? Can we volunteer? So Bigger Tuna as a team, we kind of jumped into a lot of these projects. Here we are a few weeks later, we've now got 5 different projects that are all related to COVID-19. So I'll let Ben jump in and talk a little bit and then maybe flip back to me. I'll screen share some projects we're working on. Some of them are actually with Ben and some are just solo.
And I think Ben's got some projects of his own too.
Yeah, basically, like Steve, whenever this all started, 80+% of my business kind of went out the door. So I really just started looking around, doing a lot of research, seeing, what was out there and where I could help. Number one thing that I saw in the beginning was that everybody wants to help and everybody's throwing ideas against the wall. You just kind of have to weed through the mess to find out what sticks.
Yeah.
And that has been, for me, the most challenging but most rewarding part. Because I think I'm trying to do a pretty good job of passing that information or those realizations on to others to kind of help them get through it. In terms of projects, the first thing that I really started looking at was 3D printing masks. Started working with a group out of Boston, affiliated with Massachusetts General. Lowell makes out of University of Massachusetts Lowell. A couple other maker spaces up there. They're probably further along in the mask troubleshooting and approval process than a lot of people. One thing that they kind of figured out though is they're not trying to make something that doctors are going to use on the front lines right now that needs a lot of approval. They're basically trying to figure out a stopgap that if they run out of PPE, this is the next best thing to nothing until the major players can get their production up and rolling. Kind of bridge the gap on supply.
And I think that's a very practical way to think of the problem. And I appreciated a post that you made maybe a few days or a week ago saying, for sure, it's a pandemic and it's a crisis right now, but it's not so bad that something unapproved is better than nothing. Yeah, that was heartening to me.
Very cool. Well,
Steve,
Alex,
do you want to show some of the designs?
Yeah, I've got a couple of things up. Let me steal the screen here. Give me one second.
And Ben, I'm impressed with your green screening skills there.
Thanks.
All right, can everyone see my my pictures here?
Yes.
Very good. Awesome. So this is here. Let me skip to the end just to give you a little look at what this thing is. This is a little bit of our documentation process. At the end here, this is the device we're going to be talking about. This is a chlorine dioxide decon unit. So what this does very simply, yes, the decontamination. This uses chlorine dioxide, which comes in a solid form. Basically comes in like it looks like rock candy kind of. It comes in essentially what's a tea bag, and you put that in water and it forms the gas, and the gas, when it gets to a certain content in the air, basically kills everything. COVID-19, Ebola, whatever is in the room will be decontaminated. So we were approached by a company actually about 9 months ago who was using chlorine dioxide to kill off mold in greenhouses. They were losing $10,000 of crops at a time due to mold. So this project came of that, and then once things hit, they called us back and said, "Hey, listen, we need, the unit you made before was basically like a bucket with a fan on the top. We need something a little more sophisticated, and it has to happen quickly." So Jeff, my business partner Jeff, and I got to work really quickly about 3 weeks ago and produce this unit. So I was going to show you some of the pictures here. As you see the top lid here, these are the lids that were produced at Idea Foundry. If you look, I'm going to flip back and forth. If you look here, this is the vac former at Idea Foundry. This is just a simple buck made of wood and some MDF board that gives us the shape we need. Pulled the plastic down into that and formed. There's the raw lid right here that was formed. Then you just trim out the part that you need. You cut holes in the top. I've added some blue plastic there just because one of our colors of in our logo is blue. So these are the false lids that go over the components. So this is the early run. This is actually in Jeff's garage. At one point we had to leave the building because we weren't sure what to do. So we took it into my basement, into Jeff's basement, eventually back to Idea Foundry a little bit. But this is the basic layout. So one fan blows into the box, one fan pulls out of the box. You open this lid, you put your ClO2 in there with a gallon of water, and then these relays and this PCB here, this breadboard, is the smarts of the box. So this thing is set up so when you put it in a room, you seal the door off with duct tape or whatever you have available. Then Jeff can call this thing up with his cell phone, turn it on, pump the gas into the room, get a measurement of that critical mass of gas in the air that's going to kill everything. And then when it reaches a certain level, he cuts the machine off. 4 hours later, you walk in a hospital room, a city bus, any contained room and everything in there is dead. So these are some of the pictures of the process. As you can see, a little bit of hack going on here. Our power supply. This sidecar box is actually just from Lowe's, and we're literally bringing in power adapters that we robbed from our children's old cell phones. And just wired them up in there. It's one of those sort of by whatever means necessary moments. And the result of all this, after a couple weeks of wiring up and getting it done, there's the good shot of what the inside ended up looking like. Still a little unorganized, but that's what you get when you're building quickly. It's a good maker shot here.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I was also impressed. I think you mentioned one application might even be a box truck outside a hospital where you put PPE or gowns or other equipment in the box truck, put this device in there, close the door, and you essentially have a portable decontamination room.
Yes, absolutely. That's something we're looking at. We're actually IC3D. Michael, who's a member there, is 3D printing face shields. We're actually talking to him about, just as a precaution, doing a decontamination of all the units he's sending out to hospitals. They're not specifically asking for that, but this is a very low cost chemical, and it's an easy way to make sure that anything being made in Makerland can go to a place completely sterile. We can bomb all of his masks and bag them. Hey, literally take some tongs and put them in plastic bags, and you got sterile product. Here's a little fake box here. I'll click on this. So down in the bottom here, if you can see my cursor, is some mail sitting in a box. We had the thought of being able to pump directly into another box, so you can decontaminate groceries or mail or whatever else. So this is a little visual hack here. This is just a bin that I got from my kids. They had some holiday ornaments in here. Put some plastic, a fake fan cover, and ran a tube from the disc sander, just to get a visual of, hey, this can do a whole room, but you can also step it down and do a small contained box like this.
Yeah, I love it. The way I've described this to other folks is almost like a humidifier or vaporizer that expels decontaminating gas.
Yes, exactly right. That is it. So that's one of the projects we're working on now. The company SMT SMT's Select Micro Technicians, they do professional decon using the CLO2, and they've approached us about buying more of these. So they said, as many of these boxes as we can produce, they will purchase. So we're actually getting to the point where we're trying to ramp it up and be able to produce these units at or through Idea Foundry. Ben is someone who's actually been working on parts of this for us as well.
Yeah, and just to the point that you even made about potentially using this to decontaminate IC3D space shields before they go out, while we're talking about safety and safe making, I know that we're coordinating closely because we're shut down to our general membership. We're shut down to the public, of course, but for folks who are essential service providers, we are making accommodations for people to come in at scheduled times and to use the equipment in best practices, social distancing, PPE manner. And in fact, proud later to talk about, I don't know if you want to bring it up now, how the city has actually contracted Bigger Tuna and yourself to design some other products as well. But before then, Ben, did you have anything to add regarding the machining of the buck or any of that work?
If Steve wants to go back to sharing his screen, there was that one picture of the original lid with the curvy thing on it.
Yeah, hold on, almost there.
And frankly, I was a little curious about the organic looking thing at the top. I don't know if that's
yeah, this is the one he's referring to right here.
That was the original, where it was more for aesthetic reasons. I think once the actual outbreak started, it turned back to more just functionality rather than what things look like. Times of crisis, you kind of let the looks. It doesn't really matter what it looks like as long as it gets the job done.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for that, Steve.
So, out of curiosity, how quickly do you take an idea, make a digital design, make a 3D machine buck or mold, and then vacuum form that. Normally that I would quote someone a couple of weeks, but I think you guys have done this in a couple of days.
Oh yeah, definitely. Which this one, I did the 3D modeling myself, specifically for the CNC. Most times, like Steve has sent me vacuum forming designs. He's already had the 3D model and I brought it in. But it took me, less than, a half a day to get the model made. And then another, half a day of machining or whatnot to get it ready. And then,
just to be clear for folks who don't know, you make a 3D model, you then take that 3D digital file and use a computer-controlled router table to machine out of wood, or what material?
Yes, wood is what we've used on pretty much all of the stuff that I've worked with Steve with, or any of the vacuum forming stuff. There's also, Steve has some open cell foam that will not melt. It's a urethane, so it could be machined. That way you don't have to worry. You can do slightly more intricate designs because you don't have to worry about vent holes to be able to suck the plastic down into crevices and stuff.
And that's because once you machine your mold or your buck, you put that on the vacuum former, you take a sheet of plastic, you heat it up so it's soft, and then you pull a vacuum through your buck or through that mold, and that makes that plastic adopt that shape. And that's how you made that contoured shape, or the fake or the real box tops.
Yeah.
Cool.
Correct. To this, let me just go back here just because we have boy, there's a lot more pictures than I thought. Okay, so once the mold, I've got the mold in here and forming the piece of plastic on it, kind of going from this state to the state where it's sort of ready to cut out to this state. It literally is a 15-minute operation. That buck that you saw below, I could do 150 of these tops out using polystyrene plastic. It's like once you get it to that point, you can pump these suckers out as quick as you can.
And out of curiosity, how do you literally cut out those holes, or how do you make cut out ports for an electric outlet? Or
here, let me show. I made my son take a picture of me cutting this out. Let me. Here we go.
Okay, so this is a polystyrene back form, and I've already cut this, scored this. This is basically what you do, polystyrene, when you don't have a CNC. You score it, and there we go. Once you get it started, once you score it, get a perfect cut.
Oh, so did you actually score that with an X-Acto knife around a round-shaped template?
Using a compass.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
If you got Ben around, you can have him CNC. On thin plastic, this works really well.
yeah.
If it's thicker plastic, you're going to have to borrow a Ben and have him CNC. But this is working with thin material. You just score this stuff and it cracks right on the line. It's beautiful.
That's interesting. Yeah, yeah. Thanks for sharing. Only because I see some people posting comments on Facebook. If anybody has any questions, please feel free to post to Facebook and I'll relay those to Steve and to Ben. There's a bit of a lag between our Zoom and the Facebook live stream, so I'll try to keep that going. But Steve, do you want to talk about the other project the city commissioned you to build?
Yeah, let's. I'm gonna hop back into screen share here. Some folks that were working with the city recognized very quickly there was a problem, and this is a national problem right now, of there not being enough hand washing stations, like specifically those pump hand washing stations. And when you go to a music festival, you see there's a shortage of these. You literally can't get online and buy them. The ones that are out there are now starting to pop up on eBay for $600-700. So this was I was just going to roll you through this. This is the beginning of the project. So what we're trying to do is sort of in makerspace fashion, pull together some kind of hand washing pump station. If you can imagine, homeless folks who are out there don't necessarily have access to washing facilities, also outside public buildings. people don't want to touch the doors, so having a hand wash station there, so when they're coming in and out of a building, they can quickly wash their hands. That way you don't have to worry about going to your car. Once you go to your car, suddenly you're gripping the steering wheel and you've just contaminated your car for the next driver. So having them out there. So this was the, this stream here is kind of the beginning of it, identifying the problem. Then we started looking at sort of the hacks that had been done. These are all effective, kind of ugly, but they work. These are the units that are these are like $1,000 units. City didn't have enough money to do that. They wanted some lower cost. So we started researching. You can see the images here of kind of makers from Home Depot. We were started then doing some quick sketching. Here's the sort of beginning sketches here of like, what can we do cost effectively that looks halfway decent? That sort of started to evolve, looking at how everyone else is doing it, started to evolve into something like this. This is like, okay, now we got something we can build out of readily available materials in an Idea Foundry. These sinks are actually just tubs, just plastic bins. We got to figure out a way to attach the paper towel holder and such to it. So we reached out to one of our friends, Ohio Wire down in the south end of Columbus. He's making these plant sands and such. Let me see, here's a good, probably a good, well, you can kind of see there's a stand there. So he's invented this bent wire clip that snaps on. Now there's a bracket where you can sort of grab anything you want onto this pole. So we talked to him and said, hey, we've got this idea, and we want to be able to just very quickly clamp a lot of stuff to an iron pole. So that's kind of where the design started going, because we knew we could go down the street, tap him, come into the Idea Foundry, build the bottom units. As you can see, there's the tub. That's our sink for $4. That's your sink. Just kind of we get down to some better shots here. That's where you're starting to evolve into this. Here's us thinking about all the internal parts. How are you going to get water up from the box underneath? Where are you going to put the foot pump? Items like that. It's a little too big. Well, there you go. So this is what we're building. We've eliminated the roof because we figured out that would be a wind hazard. You don't want to sail up top. But the majority of this is what we're actually going to be building. We've been contracted to do 17 of them, and then after that, we're seeing now there's going to be a need for these, so we may try to ramp it up, build several hundred of these could go for sale. We're trying to tweak the piece price down. This is kind of the beginnings of our bill of material, just throwing back and forth links to things and figuring out how much stuff costs. So that's that project. So we're actually going to pull Ben into this because he can help us shop bot the bottoms and some of the pieces, the connector pieces. So again, it's a maker effort. Anyone who's available, who's got the right skills, kind of gets in the mix, and then we very quickly evolve it into the final product, which is kind of remains to be seen. We're about to make it, but
Sure.
that's where we're going to go.
Do you have a delivery date that the city has requested them by?
No firm date yet. We're targeting about 2 weeks from now to deliver 17. We want to get the first one built probably about by Wednesday or Thursday next week. Troubleshoot it, make sure it's structurally sound. We'll beat it up like crazy. Make sure you can't steal the components off of it, because it's going to be out in the public realm. And then once we're sure we have that final design, we'll build another 16 to 30 of them within another week and a half.
Very good.
This is all off the shelf. We're talking about where Lowe's is going to be delivering iron pipe, and we're buying all these parts. They're all going to show up at our houses. We're going to show up to Idea Foundry in shifts so no one's there at the same time, and build them and get them out there.
And out of curiosity, what did you use to make those wireframe diagrams?
Well, I'm sorry, which now?
Oh, you had a couple of black and white sketches of a rendering of what the product looked like. I couldn't tell if those were actually drawn by you or if
iPad Pro, the most amazing piece of technology ever invented.
Really?
Yeah, that's a shout out to Jacob Tesmer. He's our good sketch artist. So those are all just hand rendered. Which the iPad Pro is great for this because he can draw something up he emails it to me. I have an iPad Pro. I can edit right on top of his and send out a revised version in like a minute. There's no more, we don't scan paper anymore.
Yep,
We just send it back and forth, and there's always that catalog. It's pretty fun.
And you're communicating over Slack while doing this?
Yes, and Slack is, we actually use Slack when we're in the same room together. But just because there's a documentation trail, and I can click the different people's threads. But yeah, now that we're all separated, Slack has been an essential part of doing business.
And Ben, what other interesting projects have you seen other maker spaces working on, or what have you been working on as well?
IC3D, which Foundry members from a long time ago, make 3D printer filament here in town. They started 3D printing face shields. And theirs was the first design that was actually approved by the National Institute of Health. And they're kind of organizing an effort to get people together. They're sourcing materials for 3D printing face shields. I've started to look at possibly taking that to injection molding, which I was speaking with Steve about it because he has several connections with local injection molders. But I don't think I want to go to that scale where it's, a 3-second cycle time or whatever, and printing out tens of thousands, because we can never compete with somebody like Ford. What I'm looking at is possibly to be actually building my own injection molder, then machining my own aluminum mold here with the CNC ShopBot. And then that way, instead of taking 6 hours or 4 hours to print, I think they can do 4 shields in 6 hours, but it'll take 2 minutes. And then get the cost down, turnaround time down, and possibly get those out there a little bit faster.
Yeah, no, I'm glad that you're working with IC3D, and we've known Michael for years, and we're grateful for what he's done. And we're also glad that our old shop manager, Matt Hatcher, is working at IC3D with them too, bringing his talent and mischief to make amazing stuff. And I think your point also about the sweet spot that micro manufacturing in a makerspace can occupy. You're not going to compete with Ford on a 3-second cycle time, but you can probably come up with something that's faster than, like you said, was it 4 and 6 hours or 6 and 4 hours? So this has been a question that I've had when people come to me with an idea. Before COVID, I used to say, unfortunately, a lot of people would often overestimate the capacity for a makerspace to bring their idea to reality, or their idea might not be very practical. So there would often be awkward conversations saying, hey, I think you have a great idea, but this might be a challenge, this might be a problem. The question I've had recently is, what do the need curves look like? Will peak use for ventilators, for example, be in a month? So if people are looking to build ventilators at makerspaces, and there are some folks looking to do this, will they be able to provide a handful that may or may not be FDA or AMA approved? But while they're working hard, Apple is making 1 million face masks a week. Tesla is repurposing old ventilators at rates that will outpace what makerspaces could do. So I've asked these awkward questions, and I know both Ben and Steve, you've had a great answer. Ben, you talked about occupying that sweet spot, and Steve, I loved your answer about the value of still promoting open source making. And I'd love you to mention that, whether or not makerspaces can produce 10,000 ventilators in a month, for example.
Right. So let me.
And Mike, talk about Tarek Yusuf's project.
Yes, you are. I was going to share that if you don't mind.
Yeah, please.
So, let's get to. I think I've got their website should be up here. Give me 1 second. Okay, COVID-19 ventilator. Everybody see this?
Yes.
Okay, so I was approached. I was actually approached by Amanda, who was an architect. She had an office up on the second floor of Idea Foundry, and she knew what we did. Intellectual property and some prototyping. She said, "I got involved in a project that I need you to be involved in." So I started talking with them. So this is Tarek. He actually works, he has a business doing fine furniture. So some of the makers at Idea Foundry, he makes furniture. He actually also has a bunch of CNC milling stations.
Well, wasn't Tarek, did he used to work at Honda before?
Yes, he was first at Honda. His second life is making high-end furniture. So when all this hit, he wanted to do something to help, and he also realized that probably a lot of his folks that were building these tables were going to have to go home for a while. So he very early on started this unit right here. This is a ventilator. The kind of the secret sauce of this ventilator is that it's super low cost. Ventilators are typically $8,000, $10,000. This one he's able to produce for about $1,000. There's some really unique things about this, but the kind of special sauce I think is in the fact that it takes an already approved FDA ventilator, of which there are millions out there, tens of millions. You can go to a vet office and find an approved ventilator.
And that's a hand-pumped ventilator?
Yes, this is a hand-pumped ventilator. All of them are FDA approved. What he's done is basically put an actuating arm. So you set the ventilator bag in here, and then you program with this thing. The arm squeezes down one time. When it squeezes down, it is measuring the volume of air pushed in and out. It now understands that bag, so you can start to program how many times, how much air push. It basically calibrates itself to any FDA-approved bag that's put in there. So super low cost. And to your point, Alex, why is this important now? Well, if we can make these quickly and get them out there for use now, awesome. If we sort of miss that peak, the relevancy of this particular one is just due to the fact that this was open source, due to the fact that this is low-cost materials and a simple, very simple, clever design. This is the type of unit where you make millions and millions of these. You get stockpiles of 20, 30 million of these into World Health Organization's hands. You get them to third world countries that otherwise don't have access to ventilators. Because it sure as heck isn't going to be the last event like this. You might say it's been 100 years since the last, but it's probably going to happen again. This is really good learning curve for us right now. But the relevancy of this is impartially the point where you need to make millions of these and the world needs millions of these. He's figured out how to do it quickly and cost effectively. And that's a little bit, that's what the maker movement's all about. How do you do it quickly with what you have, but how do you do it in a clever way and bypass some of the issues with doing it the traditional way? Now, these folks they've actually got FDA trial set to go now. They have 4 academic hospitals that are willing to put these units in and test them. So we don't know if this unit is going to be sort of available for the rush now, but down the line, there's a lot of people very interested in using this unit. And this particular, one last thing to add, a good thing about this unit is very, very easy to use. As you can see, if the unit happens to fail, you just pull the bag out and start pumping. This becomes a unit that you start to see for sort of triage. This may not be in the hospital room. This might be sort of a triage unit that can go out in the hands of the military, people that are maybe a little unskilled on how to use this guy. It's going to make it easy to use. So it's got its place and all that.
Yeah, and I love the point you made about maybe one of the silver linings of this terrible crisis is that people are innovating to address this and future pandemics. And so even if these efforts don't result in thousands of products being distributed to people who need them in 2 weeks, they might be available in 2 months or in a year or 10 years to other people who also still need them for various reasons.
Right. And
yeah.
one of the things that has actually become really important for Ben and I, you get into these things and you start to realize the sort of the barriers to doing this, mainly the FDA and the material constraints. It's pushed, Ben has pushed me to really look at the materials we're using, because we looked a little bit of the face mask stuff as well. And he really pushed me to look at the materials we're using and the practicality of using those off-the-shelf materials. So we're all learning together, and then we're pulling in experts. Ben's actually helped quite a bit on this, whether he knows it or not.
I hope he knows it.
Thanks, Steve.
Well, any other interesting projects you see on the future, or other things people are doing, or other ways to keep safe, sane, and productive at home for the next few weeks?
I mean, there's a ton of stuff out there. Even just from our own membership, there was one of the Willowwood guys. They are like a multinational prosthetic manufacturing company, amongst other things. But they transitioned all of their CNC fabric cutting machines to cutting out blanks for masks, which then they were asking to be connected to other sewing maker spaces or groups of sewers that could then process. He was talking tens to hundreds of thousands of masks that they're willing to cut out and donate the fabric for. Other people are printing out little band expanders for the mask, which is super simple, but it puts a little bit of comfort. Some of those frontline people. I mean, there's tons.
Talk a little bit more about that. What is a band expander, and why are they necessary?
So the normal N95 or the surgical mask normally loop behind your ears, and that kind of is stressful, especially if you're wearing them for an 8, 10, 12-hour shift. So people have made 3D models and laser cut models of basically adjustable plastic bands that fit behind you that then you could pull it back off of your ears and keep it on the back of your head instead of the pressure on your ears themselves.
Yeah, and since those are laser cuttable, those are pretty quick too.
Oh, definitely.
Great. Well, hey, I really appreciate you both taking time out of what I know are very busy and stressful days, but couldn't be more excited to watch what you're doing. And thanks again for bringing your time and talent to help during this crisis.
Anytime.
Cool. Thanks, Alex.
Thank you.
All right. We'll see you. And take care, everyone else watching. I hope you're staying safe, keeping stress-free or as stress-free as possible. And looking forward to getting together face-to-face again on the other side of all this. Take care, everyone.